The world of the British monarchy has always been a fortress of secrets, built on the foundation of never complain, never explain. But in 2026, that fortress appears to be under a kind of siege it hasn't faced in over a century. This isn't just a clash of headlines or social media trends. It's a high-stakes legal collision, one that could potentially reshape the line of royal succession itself. At the center of this storm are two of the most formidable names in investigative reporting, Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower. For months, they've been dropping breadcrumbs, hinting at a truth so explosive it could unravel the carefully constructed global image of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But recently, the tone shifted, from subtle suggestion to a direct challenge. Lady C looked straight into the camera and delivered a four-word statement that sent shockwaves through legal circles in Montecito. "Let him sue me." This wasn't bravado. It felt more like a calculated invitation, almost a legal trap that Harry and Meghan might find difficult to avoid. To understand why this situation is reaching a boiling point, you need to understand who these individuals are. Lady Colin Campbell is far more than a commentator. She's an insider who has spent over 5 decades moving within aristocratic circles most people only glimpse in films. She understands the rules, the players, and perhaps most critically, where the secrets lie. Then there's Tom Bower, often referred to as the Undertaker of reputations. He doesn't deal in gossip. He produces detailed, forensic-style investigations. His book Revenge wasn't just a biography. It read like a declaration of war, supported by extensive interviews and documented evidence. When voices like these converge on a single issue, it doesn't just catch attention. It raises concern at the highest levels. And right now, their focus is fixed on a mystery the Sussexes have kept tightly guarded: the truth surrounding the births of their children. The controversy begins with what might seem like a small detail to most, but in British constitutional terms, it's anything but minor. For centuries, inclusion in the line of succession has required that a child be born of the body. It's a strict, non-negotiable legal standard meant to safeguard the integrity of the crown. However, when the official announcements for Archie and Lilibet were released, some observers noticed something unusual. Instead of the traditional wording, stating the child was born to the Duchess, some statements used phrasing that implied the child was born for the Duke and Duchess. In high-level legal drafting, even the smallest word choice can carry weight. Lady C suggests that this subtle linguistic shift could point toward the possibility of a surrogacy arrangement that has not been publicly disclosed. If that were ever proven true, it could raise serious legal questions about the children's positions in the line of succession. But the concerns don't end with wording. They extend into the hospital rooms themselves. Historically, royal births have followed a pattern of strict transparency. The attending doctors are named, consultants are identified, and an official notice, signed by the medical professionals present, is displayed outside Buckingham Palace. This long-standing tradition exists to remove any doubt about the legitimacy of a royal birth. Yet in the case of the Sussex children, that level of transparency appeared to be absent. At Portland Hospital in London, and later at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California, the expected medical signatures were notably missing from public-facing announcements. Reports suggest that investigative teams have attempted to trace the usual medical documentation in both locations, but encountered what insiders describe as a wall of silence and an absence of a typical bureaucratic trail. Adding to the speculation is the visual footage that has circulated widely online. Clips replayed in slow motion have drawn attention to Meghan's public appearances during her pregnancy. One moment, in particular, at the Fashion Awards sparked debate. Observers, including some retired midwives, pointed out that the way she held her belly and how it appeared to shift seemed unusual to them and didn't fully align with what they would expect from a natural pregnancy. Then came the viral footage of Meghan crouching in high heels during the later stages of her pregnancy, a moment that sparked intense debate. Labor and delivery nurses, some with decades of experience, quickly weighed in. They pointed out that the mechanics of that, especially how she stood back up without any visible shift in her center of gravity, didn't seem to align with what they would expect from someone carrying that amount of weight. On their own, these observations might not mean much, but when you layer them alongside the missing medical signatures and the unusual wording in official statements, the coincidences begin to feel less random and more like a pattern. And that's exactly what makes the "let him sue me" challenge so risky. If Prince Harry were to file a defamation lawsuit against Lady C or Tom Bower, it would trigger a legal process known as discovery. Normally, lawsuits are used to silence critics, but in this case, it could have the opposite effect. Discovery requires both sides to hand over all relevant evidence. That means Lady C's legal team could demand access to hospital records, private emails between the couple and their medical staff, and even text messages discussing birth arrangements. It wouldn't stop there. Doctors, and potentially the couple themselves, could be placed under oath, where any false statement carries legal consequences. For a public image built on carefully controlled narratives, that scenario is a worst-case outcome. In a courtroom, there's no room for vague answers or strategic pivots. You either provide proof, or you risk losing everything. While the Sussexes have remained largely silent on these specific claims, pressure is building from an entirely different direction. The ongoing Samantha Markle lawsuit in Florida has started to look like a Trojan horse for uncovering deeper truths. Meghan's half-sister has pursued the case relentlessly, and it has now reached a stage where the Duchess is expected to sit for a formal deposition by July. This is a significant development. A deposition isn't a polished sit-down interview. It's a long, exhausting legal interrogation where every inconsistency can be exposed. Samantha's legal team is expected to examine every aspect of the Sussex narrative, from past claims about the Markle family to the detailed timelines surrounding the children's births. If even a single inconsistency is proven on record, it could become the smoking gun critics in the UK have been waiting for. Behind the scenes in Montecito, the psychological strain of this standoff is reportedly becoming more visible. Insiders describe a growing sense of isolation and frustration. Harry, in particular, is said to be deeply affected by the constant stream of articles and videos dissecting his family story. For most of his life, he has viewed the media as the enemy, but this time, the criticism isn't coming from paparazzi lenses. It's coming in the form of legal arguments and documented claims. That frustration reportedly reached a peak after the now well-known interview moment where Harry remarked that the baby had changed so much in 2 weeks, only for Meghan to quickly correct him. 2 days. It was a brief slip, but to a skeptical audience, it came across as a disconnect between two people telling the same story. Which brings up a much bigger question. Why not just shut the rumors down? If Lady C and Tom Bower are completely wrong, the Sussexes have the means to end this almost instantly. A single signed medical document, a verified photo with attending doctors, or one fully transparent statement could dismantle the criticism overnight. But that hasn't happened. Instead, the response has largely consisted of legal warnings and cease and desist letters, moves that, ironically, seem to embolden their critics rather than silence them. In public relations, when a direct question is met with a broad legal threat, it often suggests the real answer is something they'd rather avoid addressing. The financial stakes here are far greater than many realize. The Sussexes are no longer just members of the royal family. They are a global brand worth millions. Their deals with companies like Netflix are built heavily on their image as authentic storytellers. If a courtroom were ever to establish that key parts of their narrative were misleading, the impact could be immediate and devastating. Major brands avoid controversy, especially anything tied to constitutional questions, and audiences are quick to turn away from stories that feel manufactured. This is why Lady C appears so confident that Harry will never actually follow through with a lawsuit. The moment he steps into a courtroom, control of the narrative shifts out of his hands. And then there's the silence from the palace, arguably the most telling detail of all. King Charles has kept a careful, almost surgical distance from the entire situation. Meanwhile, the Prince and Princess of Wales are frequently seen in highly visible, transparent settings with their children. In contrast, Archie and Lilibet have remained largely out of the public eye. Some argue this is simply about protecting their privacy. Others believe it's a strategic move by the Crown, a quiet form of distancing. By keeping the children away from official royal exposure, the palace may be shielding itself from any potential fallout should these born-of-the-body questions ever reach a formal legal conclusion. In its own understated way, it sends a clear message: this is their issue, not the institutions. As we move closer to the July depositions, the tension is hitting a boiling point. What we're witnessing now is a collision between the carefully managed narrative of the past few years and the cold, immovable reality of the law. Lady C and Tom Bower aren't stepping back. In fact, they seem to be leaning further into the fire. They're operating on one core belief: that truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of surfacing when the pressure becomes intense enough. And right now, that pressure is higher than ever. The public is no longer satisfied with sound bites or polished documentaries. People want documentation. They want clear timelines. And more than anything, they want the truth. But what if that truth turns out to be far more complex than anyone expects? Some observers believe the unusual "born for" wording wasn't just about surrogacy. It may point to a broader media strategy involving exclusivity and commercial gain. Tom Bauer has suggested that the level of control and secrecy surrounding the births could be tied to future media deals, where the first glimpse of a royal baby becomes a commodity rather than a shared tradition. If that's accurate, it paints a picture of a couple who viewed their royal roles through a business lens from the very beginning. That interpretation has sparked a new wave of backlash, particularly among members of the British public who see the line of succession as a sacred institution, not something to be packaged and sold. As this standoff drags on, the "let him sue me" challenge continues to loom over everything. Each day that passes without legal action seems to strengthen Lady C's position. And every day that medical records remain out of reach adds another layer to the growing skepticism. What we're watching feels like a slow-motion unraveling of a public image, and perhaps the most striking part is that the momentum was set in motion by the very people at the center of it. The Sussexes set out to tell their truth, but they may be discovering that legal truth plays by very different rules. Meanwhile, the visual anomalies remain a major focus for online investigators. Beyond the Fashion Awards footage, critics have pointed to photographs where the positioning of the baby bump appears inconsistent with the typical progression of pregnancy. In some cases, images taken on the same day seem to show the bump sitting at different heights between morning and afternoon. Of course, factors like clothing, posture, and camera angles can explain a lot. But the sheer number of these examples has created a level of doubt that's difficult to ignore. Add to that the claims from a retired labor nurse, who suggested Meghan's way of holding her belly appeared more performative than protective, and it becomes clearer why this discussion has moved from fringe speculation into mainstream conversation. Then there's the position of the king. Behind closed doors, constitutional lawyers in London are reportedly discussing what could happen if a formal challenge to the line of succession were ever filed. It's a worst-case scenario for the monarchy. If any child in the succession were found not to meet the born of the body requirement, the consequences would go far beyond Harry and Meghan. It would raise serious questions about the credibility and oversight of the entire institution. This likely explains the palace's silence. They're facing an impossible choice: defend the Sussexes and risk being pulled into controversy, or remain silent and allow the situation to unfold on its own. So far, they've chosen silence. But the threat of discovery isn't limited to the birth questions. It could open the door to everything. If a defamation case were ever filed, every claim made in Spare and the Netflix series could come under legal scrutiny. The familiar, she said narrative would be replaced with a far more unforgiving standard: what can actually be proven in court. Every detail, from the Sandringham summit to private family conversations, even sensitive claims about skin tone or alleged silencing, could be dissected under cross-examination. This is why many legal experts believe a lawsuit is the one move Harry is unlikely to make. The potential fallout is simply too great. It would be the equivalent of opening Pandora's box, risking not just public reputation, but also what remains of his relationships with King Charles and Prince William. At the same time, Tom Bauer continues his investigation. His sources reportedly include former staff members from the transition to Montecito, as well as individuals involved in shaping the early strategy of the Sussexes' global brand. According to Bauer, there may be a documented trail linking the handling of birth announcements to specific media negotiations. If that connection is ever proven, it would fundamentally challenge the couple's "us against the world" narrative. It would suggest that the secrecy wasn't primarily about protecting their children, but about protecting the value of exclusive access and, ultimately, their commercial interests. The Samantha Markle case may be the ultimate wildcard in all of this. Because it's a civil case in the United States, the rules of discovery are even broader than in the UK. Samantha's legal team isn't bound by royal protocol or the unspoken agreements that often guide the British press. They're focused on one thing: winning. and they'll use every available piece of information to get there. If they manage to force any revelation about the children's births, or even the wording of the official announcements, it could become the first domino to fall. And once that first piece tips over, the rest tend to follow quickly. At the same time, public patience is beginning to wear thin. For years, the debate was split between those who supported the Sussexes' independence and those who defended royal tradition. But now, the focus has shifted to transparency. Even some former supporters are starting to question why straightforward answers seem so difficult to obtain. The mystery has lingered for too long. In an age driven by information, gaps in the story don't sit well with people. Many are asking why a royal birth, something that has historically been public for centuries, suddenly feels like a tightly guarded secret. As the July deadline for depositions approaches, the Montecito legal team is reportedly working around the clock to delay or potentially dismiss the case. But Samantha Markle appears determined to see it through to court. At this point, the standoff has grown beyond a simple family dispute. It now sits at the crossroads of celebrity law and constitutional tradition, a clash between modern media strategy and a 1,000-year-old institution. At the center are two individuals who believe they could control the narrative, and two investigators who seem equally determined to challenge it. The "let him sue me" moment may end up being one of the most defining turning points in this entire saga. It cut through the politeness and exposed the reality underneath. One side appears ready to fight this battle in court, while the other is doing everything possible to avoid that scenario. As Lady C has emphasized, if you're telling the truth, a courtroom shouldn't be something to fear. It's where facts are tested. And the fact that the Sussexes seem so determined to stay out of that environment is, in itself, a message that many in the public are beginning to notice. We could be looking at the beginning of the end for the Sussex narrative as we know it. For years, they've controlled the story. They've held the microphone. But now, that microphone is shifting to investigators, lawyers, and potential witnesses. The shocking truth may sound like a dramatic headline, but it's increasingly taking shape as a legal reality. The wording of announcements, the absence of medical documentation, the visual inconsistencies, and the looming threat of discovery, all of it appears to be converging toward a single point of clarity. And if that moment arrives, it could have lasting consequences for the monarchy itself. As we wrap up this deep dive into the legal and constitutional questions surrounding the Sussexes, one big question remains: what happens next? Will Harry take the risk and file a lawsuit? Or will he allow Lady C and Tom Bower to continue dissecting the story piece by piece? The July depositions are fast approaching, and they may become one of the most significant legal moments for the royal family in a generation. Whatever the outcome, the truth seems to be moving closer, and this time, it may come through legal channels that no documentary or memoir can control. So what do you think is really behind the secrecy? Is it a media strategy that went too far, or something deeper, possibly constitutional, hidden beneath the surface? Why hasn't the king stepped in to clarify the situation? And could Meghan's deposition in Florida finally be the turning point where everything comes to light? The conversation is just getting started, and your perspective matters. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like the video and share it with others who follow the royal family. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're tracking every legal move, every document, and every deposition, and you won't want to miss what comes next. As the Samantha Markle case moves toward its climax, the Fortress of Secrets is beginning to crack, and we'll be here to watch every moment as the walls start to fall. See you in the next one.